Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Keven Hartz with us. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Bronson. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin, you are the CEO and co-founder of Eventbrite, a little company that a few people have heard of. But tell us, in case people don't know, what is Eventbrite?
Well, very simply, we're a ticketing company. And, I think when we think of ticketing, we think of the big concerts of Justin Bieber or Lady Gaga or huge sporting events, professional football or baseball. But we've actually provided ticketing to every event under the sun. Some refer to it as the long tail of ticketing. And we provide ticketing for all these different categories that range from conferences to classes to music to you name it.
Yeah, you mentioned the word long tail there, and I noticed that online previously you've stated that you didn't really know the potential of Eventbrite at first because you didn't know how successful these long tail events would actually be if they would actually use something like Eventbrite. And you said that you had to bootstrap to learn the market. Explain that to us. What do you mean that you had to bootstrap to learn that long tail market?
By bootstrapping, what we did is that we weren't sure exactly how large the market really was. We knew that there was something very interesting but we couldn't put an exact market size or TAM, total addressable market, on it. So we just started working with customers on making a great product for conferences and concerts, and what we saw is that there really is a massive opportunity, that it scales to small and large events, that it scales internationally, and here we are today. Today we'll process dollars in gross ticket sales and growing very fast.
So you said that you guys will be doing over $1 billion in ticket sales in 2013. What do you think is most responsible for that kind of growth? Because that's very different than where you guys were at in those bootstrapping days where you're working one-on-one with these small, long tail events.
Well, we spent a lot of time really getting the product market fit correctly, and that was what that value was early on, is really understanding the customer. But we really worked on a number of different growth vectors, growth directions. And one of the major pieces, we don't really pay for customer acquisition. We don't spend huge amounts of money on marketing and so on. What we do is we have a free service, and that free service helps spread the word of Eventbrite. So event organizers publish events, people sign up for them, and they get exposed to the Eventbrite brand. And in turn, that drives awareness and actually paid sellers on our platform.
Gotcha. Now, so you basically have a freemium model, and freemium was really popular a few years back, and then people started to realize recently it's really hard to get people to go from the free account to the paid account. But you guys seem to be able to do that. You're making that jump. What have you learned about that free account that's helping you to really monetize those users? Is there anything you guys have discovered or you've learned that have helped you with that?
Well, if you look at Eventbrite as a marketplace for these live experiences, and that they're buyers and sellers, there'll always be some organizers, buyers that are using free events, that hold free events. And in our case, it's really the buyers, or sorry, the sellers are the organizers, the buyers are the attendees, and the attendees will convert at the same rate to paid sellers as buyers or attendees going to paid events, and we actually have more free events on our service. So there's no need, or there's the path that upgrades from an organizer that holds free events to paid events, is a nice one, but it's really the fact that we're exposing the brand to millions and millions, tens of millions of people around the world as attendees, that they first hear about the brand and convert to sellers.
I got you. So freemium is really a smokescreen. That's not really the heart of it. The heart of it is kind of the Hotmail hack, where you put your link at the bottom of the email, and then everyone who sends an email from Hotmail early on learns about Hotmail. Kind of same thing with you guys. You have a free event that's basically like, hey, for free, we'll let you market for us, and then they go and market for you.
Well, that's right, and the wonderful thing and why it's great for both sides is that because we're not spending all this money on acquisition, we can invest that in a great product, in customer service. We have live 24/7 customer service. People answer the phones when you call. basically what we wanted to do is build a ticketing company that does everything opposite of what you typically expect from a ticketing company. Great product and innovation and great service. And so when you add those elements, and we can subsidize that because we're not spending all that money on direct marketing, we can spend it on the customer experience, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. Have you guys dabbled in direct marketing and buying ads, pay-per-click, that kind of stuff? Have you tried it and just found it doesn't work, or it works just not as well as people marketing for you through their own events? What have you found out with that kind of stuff?
It's not.
Hold on, Kevin, I lost you again there. Hey, Kevin, I lost you again there.
I got that. I saw you freeze up.
Okay, the last thing I heard, I asked you the question, what have you learned about that kind of stuff, pay-per-click, direct marketing, and then you cut off as soon as I stopped.
So the vast majority of our customers come from, and that is these paid sellers, but also free organizer, event organizers come from free sources. We do some direct spend in certain categories, from Facebook ads to you name it, but it's a very small amount. When we do spend in those categories, because we gain most of our customers from free sources, we can actually spend more and average out that CPA. So when you have traditional competitors trying to bid against us, we can essentially drive up the price for them, and it's almost a more competitive foil than anything else.
Yeah, I've heard it said on this program before that buying ads is really a business model competition. Whoever can spend the most to acquire the customer, because of the lifetime value of the customer, gets to run up the ad, and nobody can really compete against them on these platforms. And it seems like because you guys are so successful at this other kind of advertising, that you can dominate pay-per-click when you want to play in that arena. So that's a cool thing. What has been most surprising to you about the growth of Eventbrite? You were there from the very beginning until now. You've seen kind of every curve up and down and what it's done. You've seen the drivers of traffic. What's been surprising about it to you?
Most surprising is actually the retention. It's mind-boggling. When you think of events, you think of these kind of one-off things and or being very cyclical. But when you look at the cohort retention, meaning customers that came on, sellers of paid events and even free events that come on board with us, the amount of revenue they generate over time, our cohorts actually increase. And that is all, again, attributable to those two things: great product, heavy investment in great technologist engineering, and then also great service. And what that comes down to is we track very carefully our Net Promoter Score. If the viewers aren't familiar with it, they should Google it. There's a lot of material written on the Net Promoter Score, but we really try to delight our customers, drive that word of mouth, and that drives this heavy retention, as well as continues to subsidize our acquisition.
Yeah. So you found that the best way to increase the Net Promoter Score is just through great technology and great support. Are those kind of the two main things? Is there anything else, around there, maybe not as important, but still something you guys do to help that Net Promoter Score?
That's as simple as it is you want to wow the customers. You want to make the service just as simple to use. And we talk about technology innovation is, just the fact that it's a self-service application, that we can provide a lot of data to our customers. And along with that product innovation comes the fact that we are sending more customers. We're selling more tickets for our customers because we have all these different channels from Facebook to organic algorithmic search to different other mechanisms of putting more people in seats and driving more ticket sales. And at the end, that is the massive value that our sellers talk about.
Yeah. Now looking back, because hindsight's 20/20, and now you can look back at Eventbrite and where it was and where it is now. What do you wish you had known about growing a user base when you first started that you had to learn the hard way?
Well, I think we would have had more appreciation around the free events. But to be honest, this is just a business that takes many years to get into orbit. It's, there's no hacks or the cyclicality of the market, the distribution of customers. It takes a long running start to get this business to scale.
Yeah.
and it feels really great now that that's all behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could, Kevin, I'm going to edit this out also. Could you lower the volume just a couple points there? Because I got a little bit of feedback there, but that was the only time I had it. Now, Kevin, you're also an investor to many startups. Tell us about some of the investments that you've made that maybe our audience has heard of, because you have a few of those.
Well, fortunately, in bit of luck, there was like one of my first investments was PayPal back in the late 90s, and that was really a team bet. That was an investment in just the super brains of Peter Thiel, who had known I was an undergraduate when he was a law student, and we were involved in student government, and he had joined up with Max Levchin, and that was really a bet on that team, and that has been a signpost, a compass for my investing since then, is to find that spectacular talent in problem-solving ability.
Yeah, and PayPal is a good one when you look at talent. I mean, they have the PayPal mafia, they call them, that have come out of PayPal, and they all go and do their own thing. That's just amazing. And some of the other consumer-facing companies, tell me if I'm wrong, companies like Pinterest, you were an investor in. Is that right?
That's right. I met Ben in the team very early on. Ben Silverman is an incredible, one of those rare founders, and really has a great product aesthetic and aesthetic for what he's building, and then really wants to have a massive impact. Is thinking about how can humans curate and index the web from a time where we're coming from a time where machines have indexed the web as in Google, and he's building something very grand there. What most struck me was just the passion of the users. Even at when I got involved, it was a relatively small user base, but a very passionate user base. When you see that type of passion around a product, time on site, these type of metrics, it's a very great sign.
Yeah, absolutely. You were also an investor in Airbnb, is that right?
That's correct.
Another great story there. Let me ask you about kind of generally these investments. You involve, PayPal, Pinterest, Airbnb. I mean, this is a spectacular portfolio for a VC company, much less an individual Kevin, right? What do you look for? What indicators really get your attention? You mentioned the team before with PayPal. You've mentioned product with Pinterest. Are those the main two? Are there other ones you look for? How do you know when you look at a product that has potential to grow?
I look at team and kind of per unit traction, so it doesn't have to have millions of users, but it is I think it's a positive indicator when a team can get a basic product live. So Airbnb, for example, wasn't at any type of scale, but they had very passionate guests and hosts using the service. But really, it harkens back to the team. I mean, I have to just emphasize that when you think about PayPal and the quality of people that came out of that, Brian, Nate, and Joe at Airbnb, Ben at Pinterest, Pete Flint at Trulia. Meeting these entrepreneurs are people that I learn from. So really, my investment thesis is to learn. And when I'm struck by an entrepreneur that gives me insights that I didn't have before, that really opens my perspective, that's what gets me most excited. And it happens to translate into a good investment thesis as well.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the positive aspects that draw you to a company. Talk about some of the red flags maybe, because, in the internet space, there's always new startups that get a lot of hype, and some people invest and some people know, let's pass. There's something about that just, it doesn't ring right. And you look at your portfolio and you don't have a lot of those, but you have a lot of the ones that worked. What are the red flags? What are the things that you look at and say, I know there's hype around it, but because of X, Y, and Z, I'm going to pass on this one?
Well, I've certainly had plenty of challenging, maybe the painful investments stand out more than the good ones. But yeah, generally it's when, I like investing in areas that feel uncomfortable for most investors that are kind of outside of the norm. Even Xoom, the company I founded before Eventbrite, it was very odd and unusual to think there was a a very negative impression amongst investors that immigrants would be able to get online and send money. It was almost comical of this prejudiced belief, and so I like entrepreneurs that are doing things that are very contrarian, that are against the grain, versus kind of following the crowd. So that's a key aspect. If it's yet another similar deal to the many others we've seen, it's an easy pass for me.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you're also a mentor to many startups. You're an investor, but you're also a mentor. You teach, you educate, you speak on these things. And before, you've spoken about the importance of learning from mentors, the importance of role models, the importance to learn from other entrepreneurs. And you already mentioned earlier, one of the reasons you invest in certain people is because you're learning from them and their expertise. How important has learning from others been in your career? Has it been pivotal or just the icing on the cake?
It's really been pivotal. I just had a conversation now. An entrepreneur from Moscow was out over at Eventbrite, and he was lamenting the challenge of being in an area where he doesn't have the mentorship. And I think about just the interactions with different entrepreneurs I've had in the last week, and will have in the next week. It's incredibly important. I think of it as I think of the open source analogy is that we being concentrated here in the Valley, we're able to, have all these great companies around us and great entrepreneurs. And I really learn, if I sit on the board of a company called Lookout, which is a mobile security company. The founder and CEO, John Herring, is an astoundingly great entrepreneur. And I learned so much about the Android market and the worldwide Android market through him. As an example, or Jeremy Stoppelman down the street at Yelp gives a lot of insights that have helped me. John Coons, our CEO over at Xoom, all these kind of daily, weekly interactions with entrepreneurs are key. And the open source analogy is simply that just as we open source software to help grow our businesses, we open source our knowledge here and share different best practices, and that's been a real key aspect for Eventbrite.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of the table, when you're giving advice, because you give a lot of advice also, specifically about growth, what advice do you find yourself giving to startups kind of over and over, the ones that you mentor, the ones you invest in? Is there anything that you find yourself repeating to them about growth?
I think an important thematic note is that growth hacking is very important, but you've got to have great product along with it. One must be careful not to over-index on just on focusing on growth for growth's sake. You've got to have a product that people really love. So we've gone through phases where you see entrepreneurs spending too much time building in virality versus building a product people love, and it's a combination of the two. I think Facebook is the most classic example of a wonderful, amazing product with wonderful, amazing growth engineering built into it.
Yeah, absolutely. One way I've heard it said before is, when you focus on virality too much, you're just marketing how bad your product is if your product's not ready to sustain the growth. Now, I've also heard you say before that you must allow your customers to lead. And I think that goes back to earlier when you're talking about really testing out the long tail and that one-on-one interaction you had with those customers. But what do you mean that you must allow the customers to lead? Because everything you've said so far has been very product-centric. So how do you let the customers really lead the product? What do you do?
Well, it's more of looking for patterns. I think a classic example is that PayPal went through a few iterations before becoming PayPal. And when PayPal found its grand market, which was in its first vector of growth inside the eBay marketplace, it was almost by accident. They saw that eBay sellers started to incorporate PayPal, never anticipated having this. eBay was using paper checks. The eBay marketplace, buyers and sellers were paying through paper checks. And so they observed this phenomenon and built features and functionality to encourage that growth and adoption, and the business took off from there. Similarly, we're always looking for what our customers are doing on the leading edge to build the business. For example, back in 2008, we started to see in our Google Analytics that more and more of our buyers or event attendees were coming from Facebook. And we looked at that behavior. It was actually attendees cutting and pasting the Eventbrite URL, ticket purchase URL into their newsfeed. So once we saw this behavior, we could facilitate it, engineer it to really embody it into a productized features, and really grew the business fast after that. Integrate with Facebook Connect, make the sharing easier. That's a great example. Another is we just started to see more and more come from mobile, and leaned into that area, and now mobile is a major driver of our business.
Yeah. Is there anything you're seeing in analytics now that has caused you to put something on the roadmap that might be done in 6 months or a year because you see a trend that's happening now?
What are we seeing new these days? I don't know if I've kind of formed a kind of a new thesis here. I think that one is just we're seeing mass adoption internationally that is that's very interesting in markets that we would not have anticipated. So when you see organic free events happening in these interesting markets, it tells us that we should be really doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on international growth.
Yeah. And you mentioned you use Google Analytics. Do you also use other analytic platforms to track kind of the metrics of your business, or is that your home base?
But we've diversified our metrics quite a bit. We've built a lot of in-house proprietary dashboards, and I mean, part of it is really building that massive data warehouse. All our information is logged and stored and assessed by all members of the team through different interfaces and different packages. And so as we build a product, we also think about data structure and the information that we log from that, because our business is very much driven by analytics. So that is a very important point. But whether it's Flurry for mobile or you name it, we've got a lot of different packages in play, combined with our own stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any key metrics that you look at every morning on your phone when you wake up?
We get the cron job emails every morning that show number of new sellers, gross ticket sales by region, revenue, of course. Those are kind of the top level metrics, mm-hmm. But then there's then it really cascades down to so many different areas, and the different teams really focus on certain areas, like how do we drive more consumer discovery of events. We'll have its own set of KPIs, or the fraud team has its own set of metrics to really watch how many fraudster, or how to prevent and stop fraud, but not hinder our good customers. So we are a very metrics-driven business.
Yeah. How open are you with the metrics within your business? Because I know, Eventbrite is larger than some of the companies we've had on. So how many employees do you actually have right now there?
We're about 230 employees. We make our data available to the entire company. In a sense, we open source our data widely to the team, because that's where the team feels that empowerment and can find lots of patterns, gain lots of insights, build new products, with that wealth of information. So it's really this open source notion of data inside our company, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's one of the bits of insight to take away from this interview, is just having a lot of minds looking at the data is as important as having the data, because people have to do stuff with these numbers once they're collected, and people have to get creative with them. And if you open it up to your whole team and you don't keep them close to the chest, you're going to get so many great ideas. They're going to lead to great things for the company. Keven, this has been an awesome interview. Let me ask you one last question. It's a high-level question. You can take it any way you want. What's the best advice that you can give to anyone that's trying to grow their startup?
Really, the best advice I can give is don't run out of cash. Cash is the leading cause of death of startups, and it sounds funny or trite, but it's the case, is that make sure you've got a balance sheet, make sure you're not assuming you're going to raise money, make sure that you know what to do with that cash, and that you can stay alive long enough to figure out how to solve your business, because you don't want to be on a short fuse. So really make manage your cash well and assume it's the last cash in, and have a plan B or plan C or plan D. Everyone always thinks that they're going to go out and raise money for Sequoia Capital and everything's going to be fine, but you got to plan for, you got to be prepared for the worst, plan for the best.
Yeah. Well, Keven, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been an awesome interview, and I know you're a busy guy, so thanks for taking the time out of your schedule.
Thanks so much, Robson. I really enjoyed the discussion.